overwhelming number of accidents are preventable. Slipping on the dock, banging your head on a rigger, running a boat on the dock, or collisions, none of these would happen if we just took a little more time and stayed aware of our surroundings. If we look at major incidents, we usually find that there was a series of bad judgment calls early on, misjudging the weather, overloading a launch after a shell has swamped, or not following the traffic pattern. Program directors need to ensure that a safety program has been systematically developed. Coaches need to be practicing the program and enforcing its rules. If you are a coach, U.S. Rowing strongly recommends getting CPR AED, first aid, and boating safety certified. Finally, athletes need to be responsible for their station in the boat and being aware of what is going on around them on the water and in the boathouse. There are many links on the U.S. Rowing safety page to other clubs' safety programs, and we encourage you to take ideas from those to create or augment your safety program. We also encourage you to send U.S. Rowing information concerning safety that others in the community may find useful. If an accident does happen, what are your procedures? You need to review and understand what is supposed to happen in an emergency situation. Rowing is a great way to get fit, but get cleared by your doctor before you start exerting yourself. If you do have any medical conditions that may affect your rowing, like athletically induced asthma or diabetes, let your coach know and have the appropriate medical form on file. If you need medication on the water, make sure you have it with you. U.S. Rowing recommends a swim test for every athlete that goes out on the water. The swim test should be conducted by a water safety instructor and never the rowing coach. The coach should be present, if possible, to observe and identify weak swimmers. If a group of rowers are in the water, it is important to know who to get out first. Treading water for 10 to 15 minutes and putting on a life jacket while in the water are the minimum skills a rower should be tested on. If a rower carries an inflatable PFD, they should be aware that putting it on in the water can be difficult. If possible, the rower should practice putting it on before it is needed in an emergency situation. Know the terminology of general boating and rowing. When you enter a boathouse and you go out on the water, you are entering worlds with rules and terminology that are not used in other areas of our lives. Knowing this vocabulary will help us be safe in the mixed nautical environment in which we operate. Along with terminology, you have to know the rules of the road, like who has the right-of-way and under what circumstances. What is the traffic pattern for the waterway that you are on? The rowing traffic pattern should be posted at the boathouse and understood and obeyed by everyone who rows on that body of water. You have to be aware of the weather before you head out. This can be done with a weather radio or on a computer. Check for temperature, wind speed, and approaching adverse weather conditions like lightning or increased winds. And for cold weather rowing, we recommend that when the temperature is below 40 degrees and/or the water is below 50 degrees, that launches be within 100 yards of the shells at all times. Make sure you have the proper clothing for a safe and productive practice. If you are underdressed or overdressed, you're not going to enjoy or get as much out of your row as you could. If you have bright-colored or reflective clothing, wear it, especially if you row on a busy waterway at dawn or dusk. If you have blisters or other wounds, keep them clean and covered while rowing. They can easily get infected if not cleaned and covered, and if the wound is continuously being reopened, it will not heal. Hands that are not healing quickly can be covered with a glove, like a batting glove, until the sores heal enough to be used without further damage. The same applies to calf bites. Keep them covered while rowing to protect the injury and to keep blood off the tracks. Plan for coxswain flotation. During colder weather, coxswains will be wearing many layers and possibly heavy shoes or boots, all clothing that will pull the coxswain down into the water if they fall in. Flotation suits are a great solution for coxswains in cold weather. If those are not available, a flotation jacket or an inflatable vest are good options. And just before you head out on the water, make sure you sign in using the club logbook. The boathouse and docks are the cause of many minor accidents. Be aware of riggers, boats being moved in or out of the bay, and oars being carried. Most docks in the morning or on rainy or icy days can be very slick. Falling on the ramps or the dock can do serious damage to you and your boat. Emergency phone numbers should be posted near the phones, and the first aid equipment should be easily accessible. The athlete is responsible for the entire boat, including the rowing station. As you move the boat in or out of the boathouse and on or off the dock, you must be aware of your surroundings. If you're moving a boat with or without a coxswain, you need to make sure that the people and equipment in the area are safe. Place the boat in the water, making sure you don't damage the rudder or skeg, and then check your station to make sure everything works correctly and parts are tightened. Check the footboards and make sure they are properly fastened to the boat, and the heel ties are tied. Seat rolls freely. The rigger nuts are tight, and oarlock closes and pivots properly. This will only take a matter of seconds on the dock, but can save minutes of repair time and help prevent needless accidents on the water. And a shell should never go on the water without a bow ball. These have saved many athletes from serious injuries. If there is damaged equipment, it should be fixed before being rowed again. Damaged equipment, at best, only gets more damaged while being rowed, and at worst can lead to accidents and injury. If you have minor hull damage, U.S. Rowing's DVD on hull repairs can help you get the repairs done and the boats back on the water. Cleaning the oar handles will get rid of the oils that accumulate in synthetic handles during normal use. Ask the manufacturer what to use for general cleaning. Blood and blister drainage should be cleaned immediately after practice with a light bleach solution. If athletes have been bleeding on the tracks due to calf bites, they should also be cleaned with a light bleach solution. If you row during the dawn or at dusk, you must have lights. Not only is it part of your boater's rights and responsibilities to have proper lights on your boat, it just makes sense. Even though only a white light is required by boats under oars, we recommend you use a red-green bow light, red on the port side, green on the starboard, and a tall white light near the stern. Even with your lights, you still have to be a defensive rower. Your lights are very low to the water, and if you're rowing in an urban area, there may be lots of other lights competing for another rower or power boater's attention. Check the lights to make sure they are on before leaving the dock. Many injuries to rowers happen because of bad technique. Gripping the oar handles too tightly can cause tendinitis, or slouching can cause back problems. Good technique will help prevent some injuries that are common to rowers. Don't talk while rowing. Focus on what's going on in your boat. Focusing on the boat and your boatmates will help keep it set and produce better rhythm. Wakes and waves present real challenges to rowers. Most pleasure boat drivers don't realize how vulnerable rowing shells are to wakes, and sometimes they slow down to be polite and only make their wakes larger. Being able to recognize wake size is important, and special care is needed. If the wakes coming towards you are higher than the gunwales, the crew should stop rowing, and the shell should be turned parallel with the wake. Lean away from the approaching wake and slightly lift the oar handles on the wake side. Taking this action will avoid having any part of the underside of the shell be unsupported by the water, which could cause it to split apart. If wakes are lower than the gunwales and widely spaced, you can continue to row without adjustment. If you are the cox or bow person of a straight boat, make sure that the others in the shell know the wake is coming. Turning in windy conditions can be very difficult. It takes a lot of time and energy to turn against the wind. Try to make the time your boat is perpendicular to the wind as short as possible. The longer you stay parallel to the waves when turning, you increase the likelihood for water to get into your boat. If there are whitecaps, you should never go out. If you row in water with a current, be aware that wind blowing against the current will increase wave size, and that rainfall can increase current. If you row in a tidal area, the water may move at dramatically different speeds depending on the tides. You need to plan your practice to accommodate travel time with and against the current. Always keep an eye out for a change in the weather, the thickening of clouds, a quick changing color of the sky, and the wind picking up speed are all indicators that the weather is changing. Lightning can be very dangerous for rowers. At the first roar of thunder or bolt of lightning, all boats should head for the boathouse if it is close by, or to the shore if the storm is coming quickly. You need to know how to safely beach your boat. Your safety is more important than your boat, but if done carefully, you can keep harm from coming to yourself and your boat. Be aware that carbon fiber is a conductor of electricity. Handheld lightning detectors are used at many outdoor sporting events and are relatively inexpensive. Fog is another potential danger. Do not row in fog unless your visibility is at least 100 yards. If fog sets in while you're on the water, move slowly and be prepared to stop quickly. Use a coxbox, horn, or whistle to advise other boats of your location, and go towards the shoreline and then carefully back towards the boathouse. And on beautiful, warm, sunny days, you still need to be aware of all the dangers on your body of water. Low-head dams, bridges, rocks, docks, pilings, marinas that have a lot of activity, and any other obstacle that may be in your path. Don't get so caught up in your rowing that you forget where you're going. Accidents are going to happen, some serious, some not, and you need to discuss some common problems that may occur at your rowing venue and decide on a plan of action for each. With a basic outline of how to respond, you can adapt to specific accidents more efficiently. Communication is critical in an emergency. As a rower, you need to know what signals to send to the coach to show that there is a problem, like waving arms, putting an oar in the air, or blowing a whistle. We are going to look at some common accidents and hazards that rowers need to be aware of and understand what action to take. A crab is when a rower's oar gets stuck in the water at the end of the stroke. They come in three sizes. A small crab can be corrected by forcing the blade out of the water and continuing to row. The medium crab will usually require the boat to stop as the oar handle has gone over the head of the rower and is now parallel to the boat. The rower will have to turn the blade so that it is flat on the water, and then bring the handle back around to the rowing position and start again. The third kind of crab is the ejector. This is when the force of the oar handle pushing against the rower causes the rower to be thrown from the boat. The rowing shell needs to come to a stop, and the coach's launch should go immediately to the athlete thrown from the boat. The rowing shell and rigger should be checked for damage before letting someone row in that position again. If a coaching launch is not available to assist, give a strong kick of the legs, push yourself high enough so that your torso is draped across the rower's bench, pull yourself up and turn over so that you are now sitting on the tracks. Once back in the boat, provided there is no damage, you can continue rowing. Collisions between rowing shells and other objects are also common. After a collision happens between two rowing shells, the boat should not be pulled apart until a coach or person in a safety launch can assess the injuries and check the hull at the point of impact. If the hull is severely damaged, it can be better to leave the hulls together as the athletes are removed. If the damaged boats can be separated and rowed, they should be escorted back to the boathouse by the safety launch. If the shell hits a stationary object, again, check the hull for damage and assess whether the boat can be rowed safely to the boathouse. To avoid collisions, make sure all rowers know how to make an emergency stop. The coxswain will give the command, "Weigh enough, hold water," and the rowers will drag their blades as deeply in the water as possible without causing injury to themselves or the boat. If your shell swamps, that is, when the interior water reaches the gunnels, the weigh enough command is issued, and the coaching launch or other boats are signaled by waving your arms or shirt above your head or by raising an oar in the air. The coxswain will order you to untie. This is done as soon as possible so that your boat with its flotational ends doesn't break apart with your weight in it. Some manufacturers have built-in flotation spread throughout the hull, and rowers can stay in without damaging the boat, even if the boat is swamped. This is always preferable to getting in the water. Check with your shell manufacturer to see if your boat has this safety feature. If you think your boat may break apart, the rowers should carefully and quickly slip over the side in pairs, starting in the middle of the boat, and form buddies by pairs to keep watch on each other. The coxswain buddies with the stern pair. At this point, if rescue is not imminent, then the boat may be flipped over to provide a more stable flotation platform. You can then lie on the hull or hang on to your buddy across the hull. Rowers should never leave the boat. If the coaching launch is nearby, everyone should be thrown a life jacket, and it should be put on. In the rare case that the coaching launch is then swamped and there is no hope of imminent rescue, a decision needs to be made about swimming the boat to shore if that is possible. Decisions need to be made very quickly after everyone is in the water. It can be a very short time before judgment becomes clouded by the cold. No matter how close to shore, you should never attempt to swim to shore without the boat or Coast Guard approved flotation. If you are in another rowing shell and a safety launch is not close by, you should assist the distressed rowers as much as possible without putting you or your boat in any danger. Don't make the problem worse by creating more victims. If a victim needs flotation, let them use your boat as a rescue board if that can be done safely. Do not give them an oar. Oars with adjustable handles float for a very short time. U.S. Rowing recommends that all rowing shells that go out on the water be accompanied by a safety launch. If you do row without a safety launch, you need to take extra precautions and be more aware of your environment. Row with a buddy. You need to carry a cell phone in a waterproof bag. If you have an accident away from the boathouse, you may need assistance. You should carry an inflatable PFD, a compact inflatable that is carried in a small pouch, will help you keep your head above the water as the effects of hypothermia set in. If your boat is flipped, you need to grab the far gunwale, and as you pull it toward you, push the rigger in the water away from you with your hand and then with your foot. Get the oars across the boat, and now you can attempt to get back in. Hold both oars in one hand with the blades flat on the water, and place your other hand in the middle of the rower's bench. With a strong kick of the legs and push of the hand on the rower's bench, lift your upper body up and lay your belly on the rower's bench. Slowly swing one leg around the washbox and sit up. From here you can get both feet back in the shoes and get to the shore or boathouse. If you have any difficulty, you should put on your life vest and use your boat or your buddy's boat as a rescue board to get you ashore. Once you get your shell back to the dock, you need to bail or pump out as much water as possible before taking it out of the water. And always use more people than you would normally to take the boat out of the water. If the ends of the boat are filled with water, open the covers and take extra care lifting the boat so that the ends do not get unnecessarily stressed. Rowers are known to head out on the water in extreme conditions, practicing in freezing rain, and racing when the temperature and the humidity are both over 95. Extra precautions are needed in these kinds of conditions. When it is cold, you need to be wearing proper clothing, including a hat. At least 50% of heat loss comes from your head. If it is going to rain or snow, wear as little cotton as possible. If cotton becomes wet or even very damp, it actively pulls heat away from your body. There are lots of great technical fibers available that will help move moisture away from your body and will retain heat even when wet. Being cold is not conducive to a productive practice or race. Conditions to watch for are feeling cold, turning bluish, shivering, numbness, apathy, lethargy, and disorientation and loss of mental capacity. Treatment for hypothermia depends on the condition of the person. Mild hypothermia victims who show only symptoms of shivering and are capable of rational conversation may only require removal of wet clothes and replacement with dry clothes or blankets. In more severe cases where the victim is semi-conscious as evidenced by appearing drunk and have stopped shivering, immediate steps must be taken to begin the rewarming process. If you should fall into the water, all efforts should be given to getting out of the water even if it means lying on top of the boat. Cold water robs the body's heat 25 to 32 times faster than cold air. If the weight of the rowers in a swamped shell threaten to break it apart, and thereby provide minimal flotation, and you are forced into the water, huddle together. It is possible to conserve 50% more body heat in a group. The greatest danger when rowing in cold weather is being in the water. Being in water below 80 degrees is potentially dangerous. It is extremely dangerous when below 50 degrees. Cold water immersion follows 4 stages, starting with cold shock, followed by swimming failure, then hypothermia, and finally post-rescue collapse. It is believed that the majority of deaths happen during the first 2 stages. The initial cold shock from falling into cold water provokes an immediate gasp reflex of up to 2 to 3 quarts of air or water if your head is submerged. During this period, concentrate on staying afloat with your head out of the water, and once your breathing is more normal and your heart rate is reduced, you will think more clearly and make better decisions. Next, swimming failure sets in after 3 to 30 minutes of immersion. Tests using Olympic swimmers showed how the body progressively becomes more vertical in the water due to loss of muscular coordination. This is why staying with the boat is critical. Physical exercise such as swimming causes the body to lose heat at a much faster rate than remaining still in the water because blood is pumped to the extremities and is quickly cooled. Immersion in cold water can quickly numb the extremities to the point of uselessness. Within minutes, severe pain clouds rational thought. Hypothermia can set in after 5 minutes in the water depending on water temperature, body type, size, insulation of clothing, acclimatization, level of exhaustion, and other factors. U.S. Rowing recommends that all coaches, boathouse managers, and persons who row without a coach watch the Coaches and Boathouse Managers section of this DVD to learn more about cold water immersion and rescue. Also be aware of high heat and humidity. Hyperthermia occurs with an increase in body temperature, usually when the air temperature is above 76 degrees, and the rower is exposed to sun and heat in combination with the decrease in body fluid. Hyperthermia may occur when sweat cannot easily evaporate. 2 things can happen at this point: heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Heat exhaustion is less dangerous than heat stroke. It typically occurs when people exercise heavily in a warm, humid place where body fluids are lost through heavy sweating. Fluid loss causes blood flow to decrease in the vital organs, resulting in a form of shock. The warning signs of heat exhaustion include the following: heavy sweating, paleness, muscle cramps, tiredness, weakness. The skin may be cool and moist. The pulse rate will be fast and weak, and breathing will be fast and shallow. If heat exhaustion is untreated, it may progress to heat stroke. Seek medical attention if symptoms worsen or last longer than 1 hour. If you are exhibiting symptoms of heat exhaustion, drink cool, non-alcoholic beverages. Rest. Take a cool shower, bath, or sponge bath. Seek an air-conditioned environment. Wear lightweight clothing. If you are unsure about a victim's condition, call 911 to get medical attention as soon as possible. Heat stroke is life-threatening. The victim's temperature control system, which cools the body by producing sweat, stops working. The body temperature can rise so high that brain damage and death may result if the body is not cooled quickly. The elderly and children are most susceptible to heat stroke. What are the warning signs of a heat stroke? Warning signs of heat stroke vary, but may include the following: an extremely high body temperature, above 103 degrees. Red, hot, and dry skin, no sweating. Rapid, strong pulse, a throbbing headache, dizziness, nausea, confusion, unconsciousness. If you see any of these signs, you may be dealing with a life-threatening emergency. Call for immediate medical assistance while you begin cooling the victim. Do the following: get the victim to a shady area and offer cold water to drink. Cool the victim rapidly using whatever methods you can. For example, immerse the victim in a tub of cool water. Place the person in a cool shower. Spray the victim with cool water from a garden hose. Sponge the person with cool water. Or if the humidity is low, wrap the victim in a cool, wet sheet and fan him or her vigorously. Monitor body temperature and continue cooling efforts until the body temperature drops to 101 to 102 degrees. If emergency medical personnel are delayed, call the hospital emergency room for further instructions. The way to avoid heat stroke and heat exhaustion in warm weather is first of all make sure you maintain a high fluid level. Drink plenty of water before you leave the dock and frequently while you are on the water. Wear a hat or a sweatband. Remain in the shade when you are not on the water and don't overdo it. Avoid sunburn by using a minimum 30 rated sunscreen on exposed skin. The rule of thumb if you are unsure of someone's condition because of an injury, cold, or heat is to immediately call 911 and get the EMTs to the scene as soon as possible. At the end of a race or practice, you need to take the time to cool down by paddling for a few minutes. Paddle or do some drills to let the body cool down. This will also aid in muscle recovery. Always remember to approach the dock at a controlled speed. Keep in mind that the reason for lots of minor hull damage is from crews misjudging the speed at which they're going and colliding with the dock. Take your time. Take the time to make sure the area is safe as you come off the dock and into the boathouse. After you put all the equipment away, don't forget to sign out in the logbook. Safety is everyone's responsibility. Rowing is a fun recreational activity, and we do this by choice because of the positive impact it has on our lives. There is no reason that proper safety procedures should impinge on our participation or enjoyment, and may actually have the effect of allowing us to continue to row as long as we can sit in a boat. Coaches and administrators are ethically and legally responsible for the safe operation of the rowing program. Coaches and athletes have been unnecessarily killed and injured, and programs have been successfully sued due to lax standards and/or enforcement of rules. U.S. Rowing recommends that every program have a safety committee that develops and reviews the program's safety procedures every year. These procedures need to emphasize issues that are specific to your location. Do you row in a tidal area, a lake with a lot of fishermen, a river with commercial traffic, or with alligators? Design a program that makes sense for you. On the U.S. Rowing website, there are examples of safety programs from around the country. This resource is a great starting point for developing and reviewing your procedures and rules. We also recommend that all coaches have CPR, first aid, and boating safety certifications. Beyond the requirement for U.S. rowing coaching certifications, these certifications create awareness among the coaching staff about safety issues. The Red Cross offers courses that are obtained mostly online with a short practical at a Red Cross office. Most states offer one-day boating safety courses, usually through their licensing or Department of Natural Resources offices. AED devices can be installed at the boathouse or exercise facility. Talk with your local healthcare professionals about the practicality or the usefulness of having one in your facility. Using an AED device on the water is not practical or safe and should not be considered. U.S. Rowing recommends that all rowers should have a swim test and medical form on file along with a signed form filled out by the coach or athlete that states that the athlete has viewed the U.S. Rowing Safety DVD and understands the program's safety protocols. This form should be on file with the program administrator as long as the member is active. If you have club members that use club singles or row their own boats from the boathouse, they should pass a flip test before being allowed to take out the boat unsupervised. Make the program rules available to everyone and make sure that everyone has seen them or knows where to find them for review. Post the U.S. Rowing Safety poster in an obvious place where everyone will be reminded that safety is important to their well-being and the well-being of the club. The boathouse and the area around the boathouse, including the docks, can be part of the club's liability. Securing your docks at the boathouse is the best option, but if this is not possible, posting signs such as no running or slippery when wet, no fishing or swimming from docks, let people know that this area can be dangerous and should not be used for play. We refer to this as the coaching launch because that is its function 99% of the time, but during that 1% of the time where it is a rescue launch, we need to make sure that we have the equipment to help the athletes in an emergency. All of the items listed below come in the Kippy Little Safety Kit available from U.S. Rowing. Air horn or whistle. Life vests for everyone on the water. First aid kit with an assortment of bandages. Space blankets to cover cold athletes. Rescue throw bag. Flashlight. In addition, we recommend that you carry a toolbox with common spare parts to make on-the-water repairs. A fire extinguisher. A ladder to help cold, tired athletes out of the water, especially in a tippy launch. Hand pump for pumping out the launch after a rain, and to remove water from a shell to avoid swamping. Radio or cell phone with numbers written down someplace in the launch so someone can call for help if the coach is injured. Anchor with line tied to the launch to be used for keeping the launch from moving in the wind or drifting towards a dangerous area if the motor dies. Lights for dawn and dusk coaching. It is the law and can help you avoid being run over by other boats. And a paddle for self-rescue and maneuvering around shells. The driver must know how to operate a motorboat. We cover this information in our Launch Drivers DVD, but we recommend each club have a detailed program to teach potential launch drivers and that each driver obtain a state or nationally recognized boat operator certificate. The driver must also know how to use all of the safety equipment in the launch. All persons in the launch should wear a life vest. New designs are practical and easy to wear for coaches and referees. Inflatable PFDs with CO2 cartridges are not bulky and do not trap heat like older styles of life vests. Any experienced coach or referee can recall stories about peers or themselves being thrown from a launch. Discuss with your team what should happen if the coach is thrown into the water. During a rescue situation, the rescuer should never leave the launch and enter the water without wearing a life vest. You should think ahead about the size and capacity of the coaching launch. It should not be loaded with non-essential people. Remember, the whole reason for having room aboard is for rescuing people in distress. If an 8 swamps, that means getting 9 people out of the water and on shore in a short period of time. The rescue boat driver should approach the rowers into the wind, keeping the propeller away from the victims. Lastly, make sure that the coaching launch itself has adequate flotation in case it swamps. As many times as we tell our athletes to check the rigger nuts and to check for broken equipment, it is important that coaches take the responsibility to make sure the rowing equipment is ready to be rowed. A system for recording damaged equipment should be established to let the person responsible for repairs know of the work to be done and to let others know that the boat should not be rowed. Trailer safety is also important, as many boats have been lost because they were not tied down properly or other accidents while traveling. U.S. Rowing's Trailering DVD will answer questions about transporting your boats on the highways. You are probably going to be the first responder to an accident. You will need to make a very quick assessment of the situation and determine a course of action. Communication is critical in an emergency. You need to be able to talk to other coaches and or emergency responders. Every coach should have a cell phone or radio. Phone numbers or emergency channels should be visibly displayed near the coach's seat. If you have emergency phone numbers other than 911, say for the Harbor Patrol, have you ever called it to make sure it is correct? If you have a VHF radio, channel 16 is the distress channel. If you have to call an emergency responder, you have to know where you are. Telling the dispatcher that you are at the yellow house near the 1500-meter mark is not going to be helpful. Do you know street names or names of the marinas or facilities that you pass? Let's look at some common incidents where a coach may have to take action. After a serious crab, the rowing shell needs to come to a stop. And the coach's launch should immediately go to the athlete thrown from the boat. The rowing shell and the rigger should be checked for damage before letting someone row in that position again. If a boat swamps, you need to count heads immediately. After a collision between two rowing shells, the boats should not be pulled apart until you can assess the damage. Check the hull at the point of impact, and each rower should check the hull and rigger at their station. If the hull is severely damaged, it can be better to leave the hulls together as the athletes are removed, and then separate them before you try to bring the shells to shore. If you regularly coach large numbers of athletes, and in the event of a swamping or serious collision, it may be better to stay with your crews and call 911 or other emergency responders to help transport athletes to shore. We recommend a plan be developed with all the coaches, program administrators, and local authorities to handle such situations. When a rower shows signs of hypothermia, medical assistance should be sought as soon as possible. Treatment for hypothermia depends on the condition of the person. Mild hypothermia victims who show only symptoms of shivering and are capable of rational conversation may only require removal of wet clothes and replacement with dry clothes or blankets. In more severe cases, where the victim is semi-conscious as evidenced by appearing drunk and have stopped shivering, immediate steps must be taken to begin the rewarming process. Get the person out of the water and into a warm environment. Remove the clothing only if it can be done with a minimum of movement of the victim's body. Do not massage the extremities. Lay the semi-conscious person face up with the head slightly lowered unless vomiting occurs. The head down position allows more blood to flow to the brain. Immediately attempt to rewarm the victim's body core. If nothing else is available, a rescuer may use their own body heat to warm a hypothermia victim. Preferably, place the person in a shower or bath of water at a temperature of 105 to 110 degrees with their legs and arms out of the hot water. If using hot pads, wrap the victim's torso in a blanket. Try to heat the underarms and groin areas. Wrap again in the second blanket. Hot pads should not be directly placed on the victim. Use a thick layer of cloth to protect the skin. It is important that the victim's arms and legs be kept out of the warm tub water or blankets and not reheated with the rest of the torso to prevent afterdrop. Once rescued, someone who has been immersed in cold water is still in danger from post-rescue collapse or afterdrop. As blood pressure drops, inhaled water can damage the lungs and heart, and problems can develop as cold, stagnant, highly acidic blood from the extremities is released into the body core. It is vital to treat the victim gently, moving them as little as possible so the cold blood does not flood the heart and lungs. Afterdrop can be fatal. If you are in doubt about the victim's condition, do not rewarm their extremities. Even if the person looks normal after starting to recover from exhibited conditions of hypothermia, take extreme care not to underestimate the seriousness of the situation. Ignore pleas that they are okay and don't need help. We can't emphasize enough how important it is to obtain emergency medical support as soon as possible. Most persons recovered in cold water near drowning cases show the typical symptoms of death: cyanotic or blue skin coloration, no detectable breathing, no apparent pulse or heartbeat, pupils fully dilated. These symptoms are the body's way of increasing its chances of survival through what scientists call the mammalian diving reflex. In the diving reflex, blood is diverted away from the arms and legs to circulate at a rate of only 4 to 8 beats per minute in some cases between the heart, brain, and lungs. The factors which enhance the diving reflex in humans are water temperature. Less than 70 degrees or colder, the more profound the response, and perhaps the more protective to the brain. Age. The younger the victim, the more active the reflex. Facial immersion. The pathways necessary for stimulating this series of responses seem to emanate from facial cold water stimulation. And finally, cleaner water aids recovery. The diving reflex is a protective mechanism for humans in cold water immersions, but it may confuse the rescuer into thinking the victim is dead. Resuscitative efforts for these victims should be started immediately, utilizing CPR in accordance with your training. Numerous people have been brought up from freezing water after 60 minutes and have been successfully resuscitated. In the early spring in the northern part of the country, when the ice breaks and the docks are put in, drop a thermometer in the water and see what the water temperature is. This chart will give you a good idea of your rescue window if someone goes in. As a coach and/or boathouse manager, it is your responsibility that everyone on the water knows the safety rules. We all know that accidents will happen due to inattention and other circumstances, but creating an awareness and enforcing club policy will help reduce injury to rowers and damage to equipment.